So, hello and welcome. Let's talk about addressing in Excel. As I've shown you before, you can also enter in your tables, like select cells with equal, E4 for example, but there's nothing in it. You can also select multiple cells and whole rows and also whole columns. But to know how to navigate in this kind of environment, we will do this next slide. So, addressing in Excel is made up of rows and columns, as as you know before, because I've talked about this. Rows run horizontally and are numbered with numbers, and columns run vertically and are numbered with these letters here at the top. And an individual cell is the addressing of an individual cell is done by the intersection of rows and columns. First, the column letter, and then the row number. So, for example, A1, H6, ABB 256478. So the alphabet runs out of letters at a certain point. We have only 26 letters in the alphabet, and as you know before, 65,000 possible columns. So after A, there will be double A, and then BA, then and then CA. So yeah, you can also take a look at this if you scroll to the right on your Excel sheet. And so as an example here, the yellow cell here, it's in column E and in cell 4. So the address of this column here with the yellow rectangular, it's E4. And you can also address ranges, so multiple cells. And the addressing is done where you need to, for the addressing, you need the address of the first cell. Then there's a double point in between, and then you need the address of the last cell. So A1 to A78, for example. And for this gray block here, for example, it's K2 double point N4 because K2 is the address of the first cell and N4 the address of the last cell. And the double point is in between. You can not only address cell ranges and single cells, you can also address whole rows or whole columns. For the selection of a whole column, you need to have the column letters of that rows you want to select. And there's also a double point in between. For example, the yellow column here, it's A double point A because it's only one row, one column. But you can also select multiple rows, for example, or multiple columns. For example, the gray rows here are 2 double point 4 because it's starting at row 2 and it's going up to row number 4. Yeah, and as you can see, also multiple rows or columns can be selected. And now we're facing an important thing to know. So you know what addresses are and how to use them and how to reference them and how to navigate through your Excel sheet. And you need to know that in principle, the references in Excel are so-called dynamic. Because when you copy a reference of a single cell to another cell, the address in that cell will be also switched by the number of corresponding cell or column shifts you do. For example, here in cell B2, there's a reference to the cell A1. And when you now copy this reference here to this cell here, so E4, then you copied it 3 rows to the right and 2 rows down. So the new reference here is then the 3 because to the reference A1, you have added 3 columns and 2 rows. It can also be done in the different direction, so up or to the left. But for this, you need to know that this is basically, yeah, uh, uh, basically dynamic. For example, let's show it here. We have here a reference A1 because it's in column A and in row A1. We have here a reference to this cell. And when I copy this to a different column, to a different cell, then it's here now a reference to C3. So 2 columns to the right and 2 rows down. And you need to know to pay attention to this. This can also be done, for example, with multiple, with an array or whole. No, I need to select this range here. The range of cells. I have here F2, it's the starting cell at the top, and the G9 is the starting cell at the bottom, and double point is in between. I can also copy these, for example, to the left. And you now see also this has switched. And this time I've only copied it to the right and not up and down. This time it switched from F to G and from G to H. So we are now referencing this here. And there's a method if you want to avoid this dynamic thing. And this is the use of the dollar sign. If you put a dollar sign before the column letter, the column is no longer dynamic. So if you copy it to the left or to the right, the reference column will every time stay the same. You can also put a dollar sign before the row number, then the row number is not dynamic anymore. If you copy something with a reference down or up, the row number will every time be the same as with your initial row number of your reference. And also a combination works. So if you want to have both a column number and a column letter and your row number no longer dynamic, then you have something $A, $1 here. I can show it here. For example, if I want to have both not dynamic anymore, I put in a dollar sign before the column letter and a dollar sign before the row number. And now we can copy it here and the reference stays the same. This will also work for cell ranges. So if you want to have this no longer dynamic, you can also put in there something before for the rows number or the column number or both. So it will also work for both. So we can show it, for example, here. Yeah, we'll delete this here. If you want to have it not dynamic anymore, you can put dollar signs in there. And you can put copy it then, for example, down or to the left or down and to the left. And you see it's every time the same. Don't be disturbed by the formattation I also copied with me. It's also doable with whole columns or whole rows. You need to put the dollar sign in before the column letter or the row number. Yeah, and as you've seen here, I inputted the dollar signs quite fast, and this can be done with function F4. So you can, for example, I will delete this here. With function F4, you can input the dollar signs for single cells of a reference or for a single cell, for example, here. And if you tip one time, it will input the combinations or both for the column letter and the row number. If you then press it another time, it will makes the row number not dynamic anymore, and also if you press a third time, it will make the column number no longer dynamic. And if you press a fourth time, you will be in the out position, in starting position. So, and as I've told you, you can copy cells, but you can also track them down. So and the references are also dynamic as before. And you can see as on the right side, you can see there is then an cross here, and you can drag it down. Or you can also double click on this cross, and Excel knows how far you want to track your formula, for example, down. So let's show it here. We have, for example, here we have for example, something we want. These are both dynamic. Pay attention to this. Here we calculate this number plus this number. I can now go here, and you see this small little cross here at when I hover over this here, so this small little dot at the corner of the cell. And when I drag this down, this will go row by row, because the references are dynamic, and applies the formula to that. So calculate this plus this, or this plus this. And also, if you double click on this point here when the cross appears, it will also go down below, because it knows, oh, you want to calculate up until this row. And so you can also, for example, drag it to the right or to the left, whether you want to drag it there. And you see the references are dynamic. So here you calculate, for example, here this cell plus this cell. So and you can also reference to other worksheets. The referencing then is done a little bit differently. It's the worksheet name, expression sign in between, and then the cell address. And the cell address is done with the rules of before. For example, I can reference to a cell here, and you see up here there's this name of this worksheet. It's called references, and expression sign in between, and I can now click on a single cell here, and the input of the cell will then appear here. And you see F14 is inputted here, and this also will be dynamic and will reference to the other worksheet. But there's something you can't reference, and this is you can't reference to a cell that references to the cell your reference is in. Sounds very complicated. You will stumble over this potentially by accident. And these are called so-called circular references. And Excel will show you a warning about this, and indicates the so-called circular reference with this blue arrow here. And Excel does not automatically calculate cells with circular references. And if you have any circular references in your worksheet, get rid of them. I only used circular references on purpose one time in my life, and I have a single workbook where it is needed to calculate it that way. Normally, you don't calculate with circular references. And as you can see here, this is, for example, a circular reference. I have here F3 plus C2, so this cell plus this cell. But in F3, I've written C3, so the cell F3 is referenced. And therefore, we have a circular reference because we reference to the cell we are calculating in. And you can turn on the calculation of circular references. As I've told you before, Excel will not automatically calculate those cells with circular references in the options of each workbook, but only use this for truly iterative calculations. And as a caution, as a warning, this may lead to performance problems, or possibly also to the crash of your workbook. And with this I'm on the end of this course part. Feel free to take part in the next one. Thank you.